Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast, where we're joined by your hosts, Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. In each episode, we'll be sharing valuable insights and tips to help you turn your NDIS business into a profitable venture. So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, you've come to the right place. Let's stop surviving and start thriving.
Welcome everybody to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast. We've got a fantastic episode for you today. My name is Paul and I am here with my brilliant co-host Tania Gomez. Welcome Tania, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful today, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And we're joined by Parth Patel of Stratex today. Welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Tania. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah,
no problem at all.
Really excited to have you here today. And we're going to be talking about understanding the implications of the disability worker cost model on your business. So it is actually a topic about profitable provider for once. It's actually completely aligned to our podcast. I guess before we jump into it, Parth, for people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, can you give us a little bit of a background about you and what Stratex does?
So ever since I was 18 and graduated out of high school, I've been enrolled in the disability sector. So I've done numerous different roles, from being a support worker, being a coordinator, being a service level manager. And then finally, my family started a NDIS business. I come from a family of health professionals, nurses primarily. And my parents actually decided to start a business way before COVID, so about 2018, and we started Excellent Carers as a family. And we thought it would be a small little thing, and like every business, it got hard, and they couldn't keep running, or they couldn't really get. So I took over the reins, and I set up the business, got the registrations, and then set up Excellent Carers. So Excellent Carers, we do a lot of things with SIL. We do a lot of things with allied health and everything like that as well. So everything holistic, just like your any other NDIS business essentially. And then eventually we moved into allied health, and we said the allied health model wasn't really working well for providers because it was burning people out. 75%, 80% billable targets, unsustainable, and it becomes a numbers over impact that you want to show. So we started Therapy Excellence, which is primarily a subcontractor model. And with that, then we actually had a leadership change, and I got out of that a little bit. And I started consulting with Stratex for the last couple of years and helping providers find their own viability and profitability. And we thought about doing these kind of things. And we're like, okay, look, we can't do these items for everyone unless we have consolidated systems. So what we do is we provide you guys with the software, we provide you the providers with the people, the tools, the frameworks, and also strategic consultancy to become viable in their business. And sometimes what it does is that the providers run on razor thin margins, less than 2%. And what that does for most of the providers is that they don't really realize it until it's too late. The margins are about $1, if you're lucky, per billable hour. And that is unsustainable, right? We can't even buy chocolate for $1 nowadays, right? So it's not really worth it for you to run your business sustainably and pay yourself a wage and stuff like that. So the only thing the providers can do is radically cut corporate overheads and become very, very optimized. So that's what we do at Stratex.
Amazing. Can you tell me about your current work on viability and how the disability cost model impacts cost drivers and the viability of NDIS providers?
Definitely. So what we've done recently is we've actually built a disability cost calculator. So our aim was that providers didn't really understand that they only had $1 per billable hour that they serviced. So now what our aim was to understand and tell individuals that, okay, well, how does it actually work in your business? How much do you pay your support workers? How much do you pay your supervisors? What's your workers' compensation insurance like? And how does this, the key cost contributors impact your bottom line and also your viability as a business? So what we did was we developed a NDIS cost calculator. It was a weekend project with my technical founder. We're like, let's give it a shot. What's the worst that could come out of it? It was much more harder than we thought. We spent 50 hours between Friday evening and Sunday night, and we got it done. And it was like, oh, we'll do it in 3 hours. That's what we thought it would take. But it actually took 50 hours between the both of us. And we probably slept like 7 hours in 3 days, essentially. And we're like, oh, we're so motivated by it and we just got it done. But it just tells you the complexity of what it's out there with the cost model. It looks very simple. You pay support workers, you pay their on cost, which is, a superannuation and entitlements, leave entitlements, and you pay your supervisors. And then you have a little bit left for yourself. And left, rest is margin. Well, when you look at it, 74% is like the bottom line that we are seeing providers actually operate at in terms of their cumulative labor cost. Right. So what this means is this is your base salaries, superannuation, leave entitlements, casual loading, if any, and then you also have workers' compensation insurance and allowances. So these are your primary cost drivers for your cumulative labor cost. And we also factor in the percentage of workforce distribution between casual and permanent. And we've noticed that, if you are running a completely casualized workforce, which many of our clients that we work with do, what happens is that the profitability actually drops to about 0.5%, from about 1.5%. So it's not really viable for people. They don't really realize it. But again, if you're running a solely community participation business with a little more volatility with service consistency, the only way you can actually be sustainable is actually have a lot less margin in that area. And what you have to do is you have to optimize your workforce. And the only way you can reduce your risk and risk appetite is by using casual workforce. So that's one. And then, the discipline cost model essentially talks about the cumulative labor cost. And so, over the last few years, it's been grayer and grayer and grayer. And we've seen, it shrink from 50 pages to recently about 20 odd pages. And you can see that the amount of detail that we saw in 21 is far less that we saw in 2025, last month. So what we are looking at right now is how does this actually impact it? So this is the cost model again, if we look at it in terms of our numbers, but 74 of the cost drivers is your labor cost. Then you get about 13.5% for your operational overheads. And let's talk about operational overheads. Operational overheads are basically, how much do you pay a supervisor? How much, the workers' compensation has been, slightly allocated to this cost factor, which, initially was in the labor cost in the initial models. And again, we've seen the gray areas with the cost model recently, and this is where it actually happens. This also includes your supervisor cost. And when we talk about supervisor cost, people actually don't really understand that the rostering function is part of supervision costs. Now, when we talk about that, people really drastically, mistake that. And normally we have supervisors and then rosterers within the operational overheads. And what we see is that actually reduces your margin drastically, because my case managers only do case management and only, work with clients, only do this. They don't do the rostering. Well, this is where things actually get really, really murky, because then this is where span of control comes in. So when we've realized, when we're doing these calculations and we've actually given consulting to the clients, what we saw is that every single supervisor, the cost model assumes that they currently with the new rates, the cost model assumes that they get paid $39.76 from 1st of July, 2025. That seems like a very, very big underpayment, right? Mm-hmm. What we see is we haven't seen providers with experienced supervisor pay anything less than $45 an hour. Yeah. Base rate. So now we talk about span of control. Well, the cost model assumes that one supervisor will supervise 15 billable employees full-time equivalent. That comes down to roughly 500 and... Sorry, give me 1 second. So it comes out to be about 525 billable hours per week, right? Imagine you're running a completely casualized workforce. That's like 30 people, right? I've seen providers think about that. It's like, oh, well, what does your supervision look like? Most providers can't really answer that question. They don't understand that part. Oh, we train our support workers. We use a learning management system to train them. No, but what does your supervision look like? Do you actually see them work and provide supports in person? The best model that we've seen is by Professor Kristen Bigby and NDS, and it's called the frontline leadership model. So frontline practice leadership, where you actually go in and see the support workers provide supports and you give them feedback. That's how you actually see a lot more professional development in support work, high quality of support, high reliability, and very high outcomes for your participants.
So, look, in all of that, the tool is there to provide really, really clear information. How will providers who might be feeling overwhelmed by all these numbers and the admin, because there's a lot of numbers you just went through there, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah. So how does that tool fit into the broader strategy for how they're going to operate, whether it be, outsourcing or their supports, or how does a provider on the ground try to nut this all out, work this out?
Well, I think this is a very, very big question, and I think what I always tell providers is you've got to break it under 2 steps. First is identification of the processes that need to be optimized, and meaning, like, let me break it down to very simple terms. What I mean by optimization: it should give you more time and should save you money. Simple, right? If you outsource a function like bookkeeping, it's probably the best example I would see is bookkeeping being outsourced. The problem with bookkeeping is everyone runs bookkeeping very differently. They all have their slightly different standards and they categorize books slightly differently, right? What we need to see numbers that actually work well, and which we can actually turn it into actionable insights to make business decisions. Now, a lot of the times when the clients come to us, we see that books are on cash basis accounting rather than accrual accounting. So they don't really know that, some providers come to us and say, hey, we billed $100,000 in June and $200,000 in July and then $100,000 in August. And it's not really accrued properly. So you just see very big ups and downs, and they don't actually understand that. So as we say, okay, well, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? This is what I mean by optimization, identifying which process must be solved. And this is the second, this leads to me to our second step. And second step is like, you need to understand exactly what you need done. Most providers struggle with this part. Like, okay, I just need bookkeeping done. Yeah, sure, we can get bookkeeping done. What do you need bookkeeping done for? Are we talking about numbers? Are we just talking about, bank reconciliations? Or are we talking about just, accounts payable and accounts receivable? What are we looking at? There's so many small concepts, and we need good, high quality service level agreements and good templates where people can actually come in, understand exactly what's going on in their business, save money, save time, increase outcomes, and then also, sleep at night saying, okay, you know what, that's taken care of me much better than I could myself.
So there's still quite a lot there, right? There's still quite a lot of things that a provider needs to do every day to run their business. How do you think that that's likely to change over, say, the next 12 months as tools like your disability worker cost model tool and services like your service and just generally technology advancing? Do you think that that's likely to change the way NDIS businesses operate?
So 100%. Look, I think the first step, that the vision when we made this cost model calculator was more like giving the directors and the key decision makers for NDIS businesses and disability service organizations the power to understand NDIS microeconomics and how that impacts the service delivery, the viability, and also the outcomes that participants actually get. Right. So when we talk about these items, we really want to give them the basics to understand, hey, look, this is much more serious than we anticipated. People know 2% cost model, but when you tell them that's $1 per serviceable hour or billable hour, then it really awakens something much more greater in them. And then that's when they start looking at it saying, well, that means that in order to pay my supervisor, I need to bill 2,000 hours a week or X amount of, in order to actually get $100,000 of revenue, I might have to have much more billable hours in that rate. So we also see a lot of misclassification and we see a lot of this item. So what we want to do is we've given the tools and we've connected the pay rates directly from the Fair Commission. And, so we've done all the hard part and heavy lifting for them. So what we need providers to do is, use the tool, understand exactly where they stand, And the tool will automatically identify the areas of improvement that you can have. And so there are benchmarks and guidelines that we've anticipated and we've actually established, saying what we can do, how we can help you, and that's really it there.
Yeah, fantastic. So where can providers go to access the tool, and what's your advice from getting the most out of it, considering you probably, you built it, right? So what's your advice for them to be able to go in, use it, and actually get something tangible from the information?
The tools are available free on the Stratex website under the tools section. And we've got the this financial year and the last financial year tool as well. So we've actually got both of the tools there. My basic understanding in terms of, or my basic advice for providers essentially is that you need 4 key data points. How much do you pay your support workers as a base rate? This is excluding your leave entitlements and your casual loading, just the base rate. Then you want to have your workers' compensation insurance premium. What's your workers' compensation insurance premium looking like in terms of percentage? The third thing we need is, what's your supervisor salary base rates? How much do you pay your supervisors? This will tell you what your span of control should look like. And then you also need to understand what's your corporate overhead spendings in terms of percentage, departmental breakdowns. So those are the 4 key areas that will actually help you understand that. And also, if you really want to go into a lot more detail, I'd also say understand what percentage or proportion of your billable hours are delivered by a casual worker compared to a permanent employee. That would give you understanding about the distribution of workforce and how you can potentially optimize it if possible.
Yeah. Amazing. That's really great information, and lots for providers to hop onto the website, check that tool out, put in those information, and really get an idea of where they sit. Are they profitable? Are they not profitable? How do they move the margin up from that 2%, or
Negative.
Something like 50% of providers are losing money? How can they, they really need to be using this tool to figure out where the gaps are so that they can be making adjustments. If someone wants to reach out to you to find out more about what you offer, Parth, how's the best way for them to get in touch?
The best way would be to get us on either LinkedIn. You can DM me directly on LinkedIn or come to the Stratex website and you can contact us there.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's been amazing to have this chat. And for everybody, we look forward to you joining us next fortnight for another amazing episode of the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast. Thanks to you too, Paul.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Parth, for that.
Thanks, Tania. Thanks, Paul. See you.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast with Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. We hope you found today's episode informative and valuable. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, and share it with others who could benefit from our insights. Until next time, keep thriving.